control. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Friday edition of the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and I hope you're all ready for a fun-filled evening of paranormal hijinks and maybe some fright, maybe some laughter, maybe some unexpected surprises. I don't know. But I'm here with you, so good to see you, Gemini. Thank you, and thanks to all of you who are here with me. Just looking at the list, I got TFR, I got Lucky, Ken, Nancy Lalonde, Three Finker, Waffle Buddy, Lawrence, David Boyles, Pondering Citizen, TFR Wookie, Joseph Skynet, and Kind Human. There's a Kind Human in there. Excellent. Well, thank you all of you in TFR for being here and being a part of tonight's journey. And the chat is filling up in YouTube as well. So it's just getting started, though, so I'll read those in a few minutes. YouTube, they have to kind of go. I think they get hit by an ad as soon as they load the page. So it actually takes a minute or two to register on the roster. So I'll go through that in a couple minutes. But ladies and gentlemen, the phone line is open tonight. If you'd like to be a part of tonight's show, by all means, feel free to call in. If you've got something paranormal to share, I'd love to hear it. You can call in. The Paranormal Portal number is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. So that's your opportunity to call in and be a part of the show. But if you're not interested in calling in, like if being on the radio kind of freaks you out, just feel free. If you have something you'd like to share for the show, you can do so by emailing as well, and you can email your encounter or your opinion or your idea or whatever to paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. So lots of ways to stay in touch. Two great chat rooms. You can join the chat at tfrlive.com and you make a username and password there. A bunch of phenomenal people. They've always been a big part of the show. The TFR Live chat room has, and so ever since I've started, 3 years ago now? Man, it's not a long time, I suppose, in broadcasting terms, but it's been a great journey. But there's also a great chat room over on our YouTube page where we are streaming this live, and you can find the YouTube stream if you go to youtube.com/paranormalportal. So there's some options as well to get in touch. Now, it's hard for me when I'm doing the shows solo to keep an eye on the chat. So if you're chatting to me, I'll do my best to keep an eye on it. But I may or may not see it for a while. But to go through the list quickly, it's almost up to 20 listeners now in there. Armand Adams, Duke Sullivan is in there. Duke is, of course, host of World Bigfoot Radio on YouTube as well. You can check it out. Great show. Deb Varner, who is our psychic friend. Gemini Moon, longtime friend of the show. Lewis is there. MCAT is there, both of whom have been around for a long time as well. Matthew Learned. Pam E. is in there. Renee is in there. Stacy Lynn is in there. Suzanne Page. Tesla Tech 89, who I've been corresponding with recently, actually. So that's been cool. And the spaces between. Miss Paisley Wild is in the chat on YouTube. So, and that's just the roster that I can see. Now, the YouTube chat roster is notoriously incomplete. I'm just looking visually here. But Teresa De La Vega is in there as well. If I didn't call your name on YouTube, just give me a hello or something in the chat, and I'll let everybody know you're here. So anyway, 15 minutes of hellos. Absolutely. That's the way it rolls. But tonight I wanted to go through, first of all, tonight I wanted to go through listener emails. I've been getting several emails in from listeners regarding their paranormal accounts and encounters, and I love these incredibly. I love when you guys submit what you've seen, what you've heard, what you've experienced, because it's what you've experienced. And I can go out and find stuff online, but I can't. I don't know if it's valid or not. There's no way for me to really truth check it. But I figure if you're going to go to the trouble to submit your story to me to read on the radio and on the show, then there's got to be. I don't believe you're just doing it for attention. At least, at least that's my hope. But I really love it because everybody who submits a story, they see things uniquely. Everyone sees things uniquely, and in every story that I get, there's always some little nugget that I might not have heard before, or it makes me think about things a little differently than I had, and I think it really helps to expand my understanding of what the paranormal may be. Because don't let anybody fool you, ladies and gentlemen. There's no experts. There's a lot of people running around patting themselves on the back, calling themselves experts, but the paranormal just doesn't lend itself to study. It happens when it happens, where it happens, why it happens, and we can't predict those things. We can't set up stringent study conditions in order to completely understand the phenomena. Excuse me, I'm froggy. But every time you guys tell me a story or tell me what you've seen, I think I gain something more about what's going on. And I was thinking about this today. I was thinking about even shows like, for the Bigfoot shows like Sasquatch Chronicles, and also Duke's World Bigfoot Radio, and even the Bigfoot Outlaws and stuff. And there's a lot of those guys have had experiences. And when you think about it, what we have to justify Bigfoot is we have a lot of prints, which is an incredible amount of prints, including dermal ridges and stuff. We have hair samples, not we, like I don't have them, but you know what I'm saying, people that are enthusiastic about it, they have these things, and so that substantiates the existence of something. But what we have the most of is thousands of people, of diverse background, of diverse character, of diverse experience, that are seeing something that they can't explain, something large, something hairy, something quick, something extraordinarily strong, and something that boggles their imagination. And so if you look at the numbers of witnesses there are, and there are literally thousands, probably tens of thousands worldwide, but if only 1% of them is being absolutely honest, then there is something incredibly profound going on that has not yet been acknowledged by our societies and our sciences. And so that alone, the amount of witnesses alone substantiates to me more than anything that there is indeed something going on out there. So we're going to get to the listener emails first off because, well, I just like to put them first because I haven't read them for a while. I got to make sure I'm at the very first one. Let me see. I'm gonna have to check that one during a break because I think that was more of a. Okay, so this is an email, and he says, "This is Greg K from San Antonio." This is Truth Hip Hop Consciousness. Okay, so a few nights ago, couple weeks ago, Greg actually had called in and shared part of the story, but afterwards I got into a dialogue with he and his brother, and they said, wait, there's a lot more to the story, and I asked him to submit it to the show for more in-depth understanding of what it was that they experienced. So this is that. So let me get to this. Let's see. On YouTube, my brother is Edward Red K, who has contacted you on Facebook, and I'd be honored for you to feature the story, as I wasn't able to give all the details or completely accurate on the radio show or give other witness accounts. Thank you, Brent. Much love. Oh, you're welcome, brother. Thank you for sending it in. That to me means the world. So this is the story as wrote by Steven. And it says, I have a super long one, absolutely crazy, actually happened to me, a story of an experience I had with a ghost. I'm not the kind of person who would otherwise believe in ghosts and spirits, but I guess this is my one illogical thing that I 100% believe in. One night back in 4th grade, my best friend Gage and I were spending the night at this kid Eric and his two brothers' house. It was Eric's birthday, and we had his mom rent us a bunch of movies to watch that night. But we only ended up watching like one or two before we all fell asleep in the living room. Now, before this night, they had always said the house was haunted because this kid fell out of the back of his dad's truck and got hit by the car behind them just outside of the house. But they never personally saw any ghosts or weird events, and Gage didn't know any of this. Gage fell asleep on one of the couches, and I was asleep on the floor and in the middle of the living room. Everyone else was scattered around the living room, and at some point in the middle of the night, I felt pillows hitting me, so I peeked over and saw in the moonlight that Gage was sitting up on the couch with his finger to his lips, and he motioned for me to come to the couch, and I sleepily obliged, asking him what time it was and why he was awake. He replied that he heard someone walking around while he was sleeping, but when he looked around, everyone was still asleep, so he had been awake for a little while, feeling a little spooked out. I wasn't fully awake still, so I grumpily asked why he had to wake me up for this. He told me his reason he woke me up was that he saw an old man and a teenage boy standing looking over me like they were going to attack me, but they disappeared. Of course, now I was spooked out, but I was still skeptical and figured he was just dreaming or lying. And I tried to convince him of this so I could go back to sleep, and we sat on the couch for probably another 30 minutes to an hour, mostly in silence, before I started to get tired again. Finally, I closed my eyes to sleep, and I heard someone walking around. I was almost asleep, so I thought maybe I just didn't notice Gage getting up, and I opened my eyes, and he was still next to me. I didn't have time to say anything before things got weird fast. I was looking straight ahead, kind of at the kitchen, that was separate from the living room by a wall so that you couldn't see into it from the living room itself, but you could if you were on the couch or just in that half of the room. And right when I blinked, I heard pots and pans shuffling, but there was clearly no one else awake. I didn't want to close my eyes again, so I avoided even blinking for as long as I could. As soon as I did, a teapot started whistling. At this point, I was pooping myself and didn't dare move or breathe. I just stared intently into the darkness, trying to figure out what was happening. I blinked a minute later, and after no one did anything about the teapot, and the light in the kitchen turned on, in the split second my eyes were closed. Then I blinked again, and the teapot turned off. I blinked once more, and then I saw it. Standing there in the middle of the fluorescent kitchen light was a shadowed, black-cloaked figure. Despite the glaring light just above it, there was no definition to any part of this being. I couldn't make out a face, or hair, or clothes at all. All I could tell was that it was staring right at me. I was paralyzed with fear. The silence was so heavy, and the darkness in the rest of the house seemed to have become pitch black, putting me in a separate dimension where only the couch, the kitchen, and the ghost and I existed. Eventually, I dared to blink again, and it disappeared. Sound and light returned to the rest of the house, and I blinked, and the light turned off once more, and the pot shuffled last blink, and the teapot turned off finally. I didn't know what to do. After a minute of silence, Gage asked, "Did you see that?" He proceeded to describe the exact same event to the finest details. He could see behind the bar where it was, and he said that it was floating about 6 inches off the ground. We stayed awake for the next few hours without moving and went home as soon as the sun came up. It was honestly the scariest, most thrilling thing I have ever experienced. When I read about the Dementors in Harry Potter and what it feels like when they're around, it felt like it was just describing my experience exactly. It's like it had a presence to it that just took over the atmosphere and my mind. Wow, that is really, really intense. And I think the thing that really amazes me most about this story is that's really, really profound activity. And these were fourth graders. I mean, and they sat there like pros and just sat through it. Now, I'm telling you, a lot of paranormal investigators would have run out of there with that activity, but they sat there and just watched. And my hat's off to them, because that's incredibly brave, incredibly brave. So very cool. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. I appreciate the more detailed account. That is really, really cool. It sounds like it's not just the old man and the boy. It sounds like there's something else there. I don't know. It's all speculation, really, but that shadowy thing doesn't sound like a normal human apparition. But very wild anyway. And thanks again. Now, the next one is coming from a listener, Jalen. All right. And this one's a little long, but it's going to be great. This has to do with Bigfoot. So let's see what's going on here. It says, hey, thanks for all that you do. Here are my Bigfoot stories. Yes, plural. I grew up in northern Idaho, which is densely forested and very mountainous, but I guess I don't need to tell you that. Yeah, because this person had mentioned this on a thread on Facebook, and I was like, wait a minute, I want to hear what you've been through. And she mentioned that she was from northern Idaho, and I'm like, well, hey, that's where I am. She doesn't currently live here, but these accounts happened when she was much younger. So let's get to this one. It says, my dad is a mountain man, a real-life Jeremiah Johnson, who grew up in the heart of the Tetons. We, my brothers and sisters, grew up shooting, walking mountains, hunting, eating wild meat, etc. We are comfortable in the woods and spent a lot of time in them. First of all, I don't know if this encounter is even real or a dream. It is one of my first memories, and it has colored my life. And this is what I recall. I was sitting in front of my dad on his motorcycle, and he'd often take me up into the nearby mountains for a ride, looking for good timber to cut, and I was probably around 4 years old. Since I remember being potty trained, I was young enough that he had to help me squat so I didn't soil myself. I can remember being suddenly alone next to the bike because my dad had hiked up the hillside to look at a tree. He only cuts buckskin tamarack. And I remember being scared, and that's when lucid memory ends. What I find strange is that I have had reoccurring nightmares throughout my life replay this event, but with the added excitement of a Bigfoot. In my dream, everything is as I said: motorcycle ride, looking for timber, potty stop, dad stopping to check out a tree he could see up on the hill above us. But in my dream, there is brush breaking and popping that isn't coming from my dad. There is a big brownish black monster on the ridge walking across my view as I stood by the bike on the logging road. It goes from left to right, walking between trees, following the ridge going down. It sees me but doesn't really pay me any attention. It just walks faster, and it always fills me with fear, even to this day at 39 years old when I have this dream. So I don't know if it really happened and I blocked it out, or if it is what it is, a dream. But that's my first encounter, if you can call it that. Fast forward 8 years, my parents bought some lakefront property nestled between two mountains on beautiful Hayden Lake. Yeah, I'm familiar with that area. At that time, there were some summer cabins sprinkled along the shoreline, but the area was mostly unpopulated, and when people did reappear, it was only for a month or two in the summer. We hadn't moved there yet, but we were using it as a weekend getaway, and we'd sleep in the little one-room A-frame cabin and fish and play throughout the day. One fall day, my little brother and I decided to play a game of hide and seek on the deer trails that crisscross the area. We'd been playing for about an hour, and I was starting to get dark. Oh, man, 6 minutes. Yeah, I should make it. The forest was dense, so it was really dark in spots and dappled with golden in the clearings. It was my turn to hide, and I was on the deer trail that was headed down towards the lake when I got a very uncomfortable feeling. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and I got very scared, though I couldn't say why. I was jogging along, dodging branches and looking behind me, hoping to see my brother appear, but he didn't. At one of the turns, I looked ahead of me, and there, standing on the side of the trail, was a creature that towered over me. I'd estimate it to be about 20 or 30 feet away. It didn't move or make a sound as I slowed myself. I stared at it, trying to see its face better, but the sun was behind it, and it just looked black. Its shoulders were massive. It was standing right in front of a huge old-growth ponderosa pine, and it was about twice the width of it. Massive. It had long hair, and it appeared black in the low light. The fear I felt was so intense that I remember my hands were shaking. I immediately dodged right off the trail to get back to my parents' cabin as fast as I could, whipping through the willows and the bush. It could have easily gotten me. It didn't follow me that I'm aware of, but when I reached my family, I didn't say anything. I know exactly what would have been said. In fact, I finally decided to tell my father about it just a few months ago, and he said exactly what I thought he would. I've been in the mountains my entire life, and I've never seen anything resembling a Bigfoot. He told me it was my active imagination. He told me it was dark and I was young, and this was all true, but as I said, it has colored my life, and I can't go into the woods now and not think of it. My parents ended up building a house on that property, and I lived there until I was 18. I've never had another experience there. The landscape has changed drastically now. There are houses all over the place now, and with full-time residents, so I imagine any Sasquatch would have left long ago. Another time I was probably around 14. We, my dad and my younger brother, had driven into Montana to hunt for grouse, only about an hour away, and my brother and I slept in the back of my dad's truck, which had a shell on it. My dad slept in a tent near the driver's side door, and I was awoken in the middle of the night, I have no idea of the time, by something I couldn't explain. I woke up fully aware and full of fear. I froze in my sleeping bag, and I remember wondering if the sounds I was hearing were actually snores coming from my dad or something else entirely. It was a snorting sound and a huffing. The moon was full, and our camp was fully illuminated. Irrational fear for my father filled me. I sensed some sort of danger and was terrified for my father, who only had a tent as a barrier of protection. I snuck a look out the window, and my fear was explained, there was hunched creature bent down on one knee not far from where we'd had a campfire. It appeared to be sniffing at things. The air and green sticks we'd cut and used to roast hot dogs and marshmallows. It had light brown hair like the color of dead grass in the moonlight, and I had a view of its profile. I laid back down quickly so as not to be seen and covered my head. I prayed the rest of the night for it to leave. Nothing happened. My dad was safe, and I couldn't tell him of the experience the next day because I knew what he would say. Anyway, that's my story, as simple as it is. Thanks again. Keep doing what you're doing. Cheers, Jalen. Wow. Very, very intense. That's, again, it's the bravery of these young people that really shocks me and surprises me. I don't know. I don't know what I would have been able to do in those situations. I know the time that I did have an experience, it was behind me. I never saw it. I just felt that low growl just hit me like it just vibrated my body. And I assume that was a Sasquatch. I can't be sure, obviously, but I assume it was. And I couldn't turn around. I could not do it, because when that growl hit me, whatever made that growl was so big, and I didn't even have a concept that it could be a Sasquatch. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was very, very big. And the only big thing around our forest was white-tailed deer, and so whatever it was huge. And I knew that me being a 14-year-old kid, I knew whatever made that noise, I was not a challenge for it. I knew that whatever it was could kill me, and I thought it was going to. It was just terrifying. We were just frozen in place for several seconds, and then we both just simultaneously bolted out of there, and very terrifying experience. But she's standing face to face with something, and then peeking out at a camper side of the pickup truck, and seeing one hunched over. Well, it had a topper, but it was a makeshift camper. I don't know. That's so brave. That's so brave. I'm so impressed. And the ghost story as well. Just sitting there quiet as these events are unfolding, seeing something appear, knowing it's staring at you. That is incredible. You guys are incredible. There's no question about it. And we're just about at the first break, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll have more of these listener emails when we come back. But I just, there's no question why I love these stories. These are amazing. And remember, you can call in, but please wait till after the listener emails for the call-ins if you're going to call in. So we got a few more to go through, and then we can talk to you live here on the portal, ladies and gentlemen. So don't go away. We'll be right back in just a couple of minutes. Time to pay the bills. welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the second half hour of our show tonight. I hope you're enjoying the journey so far, and a special thank you again to those of you who have written in your accounts. I love reading them. I love talking about them. I love hearing them. I got a couple more to go through now, but just know that the phone lines are open on the portal. And if you have something you'd like to share on the show, please feel free. 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. I had to strategically pause there for the Coke burp, but I got through it. So there you have it. All right. So the next story is coming from another listener. And it's really cool because I've seen an uptick in the amount of stories that we're getting from podcast listeners as well. So that's really cool. And I believe that's the case here. So, all right. So this is a story from a listener named Bobby. And he says, there's an old story of a man who was hanged. When they asked him if he had any final words, he declared his innocence once again. And he said his shadow of the hanging would haunt his cell on the jail. They hung him and people started forgetting about him. Then one day the image of the hanging man appeared on the outside of the man's cell wall. And they felt it was just someone pulling a joke, so they painted it several times, hiding it, and they even replaced the bricks. But each time the image came back. They finally planted kudzu and let it grow up to hide his image. Years passed and the old jail was abandoned, and the land was finally sold to a national business doing really well, and they built a nice restaurant there, but the business suddenly went broke and the business was closed. About a week after closing, the image of the hangman appeared where it had been on the old jail. Then several businesses moved in, each going bankrupt all at once. Each time, the image reappeared. People started calling it the curse of the hanging man. There's a Domino's pizza business there now, and it's doing okay for several years, and many say the curse is broken. Some say it's just lying in wait. Ooh, that's kind of spooky. Yeah, I don't know. You know, I've heard those kind of tales before. What the hell just happened? My screen went all blank. Welcome back. Thank you very much for that. Everything was just gone. Only on one monitor, mind you. That's unusual. I use dual monitors, but apparently one of them needed a quick break, but it looks like it's back now. So there is legends like this that exist. I've heard a legend similar to this where a man was innocent and was going to be hanged, and as they were going to take him to the gallows, he placed his hand on the wall and said, I am innocent, and as a symbol of my innocence, my handprint will remain here. And they took him and hung him, and sure enough, an outline appeared where his hand was, like a shadow on the wall. And so they tried scrubbing it over time. They tried painting it, but always the hand would reappear. So I don't know if these are kind of apocryphal tales that maybe change narrative just little by little, depending on where they're told, or if it's just something supernatural. I don't know. I like these kind of stories, but again, they're based in legend, and it's hard to make any real meaning out of them. I suppose if an innocent spirit impressed a bunch of emotional energy there before they were hanged, maybe a handprint would stay, or maybe their silhouette would remain. I don't know. It's a creepy thought, though, that somebody innocent paid for a crime they didn't do. Anyway, thank you for that story. I appreciate it. That's really cool. Let's go to another one. And this one is not real long. This is, I think it's our last one, but I will double check. It says, Good morning. My name is Chantal. Feel free to use on your show. So I grew up in Jamaica, and I would always see spirits. For instance, one night my mom was about to go out, and I was so upset. However, I stayed up with her until her date came for her, And while we were outside, there was a pile of cement because there was a tenant who makes blocks for houses. And I ran up on top of it and looked down, and I saw a pirate standing in the corner of the house looking at me. Even had a wooden leg. I told my mom, and she thought I was crazy, and I'm not sure, but I live near to Port Royal, that city. What? I live near to Port Royal, that city that half of it sunk. And I asked around, what are the chances of pirates actually coming out here? And a lot of people said there were very high chances. Another experience was my grandmother had cancer, and she had to go to surgery. And while she was in the hospital, I was staying in her room. And I heard someone walking around the house for about a week, kicking a bottle. And I would look out the window, and all I would see is the bottle moving, but no one was there. I talk about this experience the most because I remember how scared it made me feel, so scared that I would cry myself to sleep. I didn't feel safe. When my grandmother came out of the hospital, it stopped, and then she died about a week after that, after she had come home. Another one was a childhood friend of my brother went missing, and at that time we did not have fully functioning bathrooms, so you have to get water from a pipe to a shower. And it was around 10, and we had a sensor light in the backyard, and for some reason, it did not turn on when I went back there, and I saw my brother's friend by the pipe, and I said to him, "Why are you hiding by the pipe?" And he didn't answer me. So I just got my water and left. The next day on my way home from school, news broke in the community that he was murdered and found dead in an open lot in the back of my house, and that his body was apparently there for days, and they just found him. All in all, I don't see spirits anymore, especially since I live in the States. I only see them when I'm in Jamaica, and it makes now sense to me why I only see them there and not here. I wonder if she says makes no sense, but she says now sense. Yeah, that's bizarre. I'm sure there's, so much history in Jamaica that wouldn't surprise me at all, and so much tragedy in Jamaica as well, that there must be just a huge energy imprint all over there. And I think there are just some areas that are more prone to have hauntings and apparitions than others. And it may have to do with ley lines. It might have to do with energy. I don't know. There's so many ideas of what could cause hauntings and why only some places, why not all places. And who really knows? But there's a lot of theories out there. But very cool. And thank you so much, Chantal, for sending in your stories. I really, really, really like it. But yeah, I think that was it. I think that was the last of the stories that I have for tonight. So awesome. That's a great start to the night for me, because that's a segment I just love doing. All right. So I typed the number for Paranormal Portal show, but I'm not sure if that is what was being asked for. Oh, 720-923-0500. Yeah, so that's it for the listener mail. So if you wanted to call in, please feel free. Just sitting here, going to go through some more stuff. Lots of paranormals, I found this article that I wanted to go through, and I think it sounds pretty cool. I'm a firm believer that when you're around evil, you just know it. You just sense it. And I think even the most skeptical person has had those experiences where suddenly they just feel like something's wrong because you're around something that is so contrary to good, and it's just like anti-good. I don't know how better to explain it, but I think that we have the ability to pick up on that, and we know on a very intuitive level. Throughout doing the show and doing research into the paranormal, the one thing that I think really, really surprises me the most of all, and really speaks to an extrasensory perception. I really hate that word ESP because it's been so bastardized and carnivalized. And I don't even really like the word psychic, to be honest with you, just because there's so many charlatans that use it. But, for those that don't believe in the idea that we have senses that can't quite be explained, I keep thinking about in the stories that we read and that we go through, whether they're submitted by listeners, whether they're things that we find or whatever, or callers to the show many times have talked about this feeling of being watched. And I think that's a sensation that pretty much everybody is familiar with. Now, it can happen where it's not even a direction we're looking. Like, you just get that feeling. Not only do we feel like someone's watching us, but we also get a sensation of where that's coming from. So it can be completely in a blind spot, like to our back, left, or right, or whatever. And there's no valid reason that we would pick up on that. But I think that that's incredibly profound. We actually have a call, so let me get to this call first of all. And this is area code 580. You are on the air.
Hey, how's it going, bro? This is DDoS. I'm the head researcher and host of The Late Show for the BDRP on YouTube.
Oh, fantastic.
I've been listening to you for a little bit now, man. I think you're outstanding. I love your format. I love the way you carry your show. It's phenomenal.
Oh, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate that. That's amazing.
Absolutely, man. Keep up the good work. And yeah, I just want to call in and give you your kudos that are much deserved. And if I can, I'd really like to have you on my show. It's a little small mom and pop organization. I think we have like 16,000 subscribers, but I want to see this channel grow because we delve into the same things. I'm a cryptid investigator, field investigator, and I host this show.
Oh,
but all of these things are interwoven, I think, through microscopic strands, whether it be the UFOs, ghosts, the cryptids, like what I study and go out and investigate in the woods, which are like Dogman, Bigfoot, and so on.
Uh-huh.
So I really do think it's all connected. You said something about the ley lines earlier. That's very fortuitous for you. I could tell you're a smart man because all of these things seem to congregate where the ley lines cross.
Yeah, there does seem to be a vergence or convergence, and I think it hits on a really instinctual level. Like it's coded in us, I think, in a lot of cases, and I imagine perhaps that residual energy really helps in these situations for spirits to, not subsist, I guess.
For sure, and that's you have the scientific way of explaining it, and I'm an old school, Christian. So I look at it as spirit recognizes spirit. I believe that we are made up of the three parts: the spirit, the soul, and the fleshly body. But I believe our spirit is way more powerful than what people think. And I'm not just talking about winning football games. You know what I mean? Like you say, you're out there in these woods or these haunted houses, and all of a sudden your hair stands up on end. That's something that's metaphysical, non-physical, affecting the physical world.
Right.
It affects us to the point where we get that cold chill, like somebody's throwing ice water on our back.
Right.
And we're in a field that's never boring. That's what's cool about it.
Well, take a couple minutes and let our listeners know about your show too, because I'd love to be on it. I'm honored, and just reach out to me either on Facebook or through the email at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and we can figure something out. But let our listeners know a little bit about your show.
Absolutely. I'll keep it short and sweet. Like I said, I'm DDoS. I'm the head investigator and founder of the Bigfoot Dogman Research Project. That shouldn't, lead you to believe that that's all that we delve into. Much like our gracious host here, we're a jack of all trades. But primarily, I'm a field investigator for Bigfoot in Texas and Oklahoma. We host a late show where we have a variety of guests, and not only guests, but topics that we'll discuss and round robin discussions and stuff like that. So yeah, if you want to check it out, the BDRP on Facebook, and I would love to have you on. I think that you would add a fantastic dynamic to what we already have. Bron Sullivan's in the chat. He's been on there before, not as many times as I'd like, but he's saying something about synchronicity. I really do think it's that old saying of birds of a feather flock together. You know what I mean? Us like-minded folks, we just seem to congregate.
Right. No, I'd be honored, brother. So, just get a hold of me and we'll make it happen. But thank you so much. And thank you for the really kind words. That's amazing.
Absolutely. You keep up the good work, man. You're going to go far. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you do, because you got a great show.
All right. Thank you, brother. Have a great night. And thanks so much. All right. Thanks for calling in.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
That is cool. That's very nice. It's humbling to hear things like that. I mean, really, I'm just enthusiastic about the subject, and I'm glad that translates into a show that people enjoy watching. I'm glad you guys come and watch every show, and all of the listeners out there. But it's very humbling to hear that, because this is primarily a labor of love. But he's right. I have met so many amazing people doing this show, and a lot of them are you guys out there. Just it's really cool, and it becomes a family. It becomes it's not so much just a bunch of like-minded people. It becomes a community, and in our chat room, in our of those who are here all the time, they've created this family that is just so amazing. And again, I'm humbled by that. So it's really cool. That's very, very cool. I appreciate that. It's just never a normal episode. And that doesn't mean it's abnormal. It just means they're usually far above normal. Just because things, like I've said many times, I can come into the show with an idea of what the show is going to be. But then once you turn on the lights and you start talking and people start participating, it just becomes its own thing. And I'm most of the time, I'm like just hanging on to see where it goes. I'm surfing. I'm not creating the wave. I'm just riding it. So very fun, very, very cool. And again, the phone lines are open if any more of you would like to call in and share your thoughts, whether they be just ideas. If you have an idea about anything we're discussing, any thoughts to reflect on, that's always welcome as well. I surely don't know it all. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm an enthusiast, and that's the edge of my scope and experience. But I like to discuss it because and it's something I've said so many times on the show, but the paranormal isn't where reality goes sideways and things go skewy. The reality of the situation is that the paranormal is really, in my opinion, it's the breadcrumbs to showing us the dynamic nature of the reality in which we live. We get this tunnel vision and we get so focused on 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and then weekends are for fun, and we get programmed into these ruts. And meanwhile, there's this miraculous, dynamic, shifting reality around us full of potential. And I think largely we miss it because we're just programmed to stay in our little rut. So for whatever that's worth, those are my 2 cents on that. But I really appreciate it. It's always cool to hear, from other shows and stuff. That's amazing. I'm just really humbled. So in regards to the evil, I think we sense it. We know when people are watching us. We know when something's not right. There's just that phrase, the gut feeling. You got to listen to those gut feelings, and I firmly believe in that. If you ever have a bad gut feeling, it doesn't matter how inconvenient it will be. Listen to it, because you're getting that for a reason. That's like something screaming at you, going, "Hey, hey, hey, hey." So don't ignore those. But I'm going to read you some stories of people who believe they've encountered pure evil. So let's see what they've got to say. All right. I'm in college, and I live in campus in a dorm. And this dorm is a very old and community style, and I've been living there for about 2 months with my roommate, and everything has been absolutely fine. Then in the last week, we had all of our lights in our room, just our room, go out. We've been trying to get maintenance requests in for the past week, but the website won't allow us to do it for some reason. So last night, we went to bed in our many layers and multiple blankets to battle the cold. I'm usually a lucid dreamer and can wake myself up if I need to. Last night, though, I heard my roommate yelling from the hallway that her key wasn't working in the lock and that she needed in now. So I stumbled out of bed and was reaching for the lock on the door when I looked over and saw her asleep in her own bed. I backed away from the door to get back to sleep, thinking it must have been a dream, that I'd thought it was real. I took a last look at my sleeping roommate and went to turn around to climb into my bed when I saw the shadow under the door. The door is a good inch or two off the ground, so I bent down to see if there was someone standing at our door or the one across the hall. When I was eye level with the crack, I saw a pair of boots facing our door. Then the person turned away and I heard the stairwell door open. I couldn't even turn on the lights because the bulbs were out, so I crawled into bed with my lamp and sat there for an hour because I was absolutely freaking out. To get onto a girl's floor, you have to have the student card of someone that lives here, and they lock the building up at midnight every night to make sure that only students and guests are inside. We've had problems with homeless people sleeping in the basements of some buildings. I was freaking out because the boots were men's boots. So here's the thing. Now it sounds like just, a kind of a twisted person trying to get in, like maybe a crazy person, maybe somebody dealing with some issues, maybe somebody with a lot of bad intent. But the part that I think is very interesting is that this person had heard the voice of her roommate screaming that she needed to get in, her key wasn't working, when her roommate was soundly asleep in her own bed. So whatever that case is, it does have a supernatural or paranormal tinge to it, because that's not a coincidence. That just can't be a coincidence. But by the sounds of it, there shouldn't have been any access for some creepy person to just wander in anyway. So I don't know. Not that somebody couldn't have lost their ID card and somebody grabbed it and scanned it and got in, but even if that was just a person, the other part of it was there some kind of other element at work there? And this is just me really, really trying to reach and understand what could have been going on there. But again, we know the person heard that roommate's voice screaming to get in because their key didn't work. Could that have been some kind of demonic possession, oppression, or something else negatively working through that person? Just throwing it out there. I don't know, and it's purely speculative, but when you hear a story like that tinged with a paranormal element, I mean, most people can't conjure the voice of somebody else to convince, somebody that it's okay. So that's definitely a supernatural element. And what does that mean? So to me, it just seems like something really dark was going on there. Not just dark like some psycho. It was dark like some possessed psycho. All right, the next one. All right, so this says this is exactly why everyone needs a guard dog. This is a true story that happened to me. I dated a kid in high school for about 3 months, and he became very controlling and jealous over that time. He actually tried to choke me once over a comment I had made, and I immediately ended things with him, which is a good thing. Now, this one may or may not be paranormal. Again, I just pulled up these stories of people encountering evil, but, we still got to search it out. So fast forward about 9 years, I'm single, successful job, own a house, and wonderful 220-pound St. Bernard named Sergeant. My life was full. I had no want for anything, especially a relationship. And out of the blue, I get a Facebook message from the guy I dated in high school. He asked how I was and things like he thought about me all the time and wanted to get together to have dinner. I politely but firmly said no, and I thought that was that. Unfortunately, it turns out that he is extremely persistent. He started messaging me on Facebook 2 or 3 times a day, and I ignored him and continued working and living my life. And it got to the point where he would message me over 10 times a day. So, of course, I blocked him and again didn't think anything of it. Then things got a little concerning after that. He somehow got my phone number and started texting me more than 20 times a day. Some of the texts started creeping me out. Like, he said things like, "Saw you in your yard today. You look good." And I always get what I want. Oh, man. This is so horrible that people are so broken. Jeez. What bothered me the most is that he found out where I lived. As a 23-year-old, I have no reason for a home phone and just use my cell phone, so my address wasn't published anywhere that I was aware of it, and it just set up a couple of red flags. My St. Bernard was a big ham, so he sleeps in bed with me at night. One night I woke up to my St. Bernard covering me with his whole body and shaking all over. I lifted my head a little to get a better look at his face and was shocked to see that he had what I could only describe as a silent, feral snarl on his face, staring out my bedroom window. I turned my head because it was the only thing I could move, having an oversized lapdog pinning me to the bed, and saw that SOB that was internet stalking me for months. The SOB looked straight into my eyes and hightailed it out of there. Oh man, I'm going to have to come back to this. So this is bad timing on my part, ladies and gentlemen, but we'll be right back for the second hour of the show. We'll figure out what's going on with this big dog and the creeper, and I'm sure everything will end well. Don't go away, everybody.
Play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping scars across my heart. Raging anger pours inside me as their lies keep falling apart. I am finished with my silence. I am not a stupid boy. No more breaking me with kindness. Just you dance upon my joy. Leading me with empty promise. You're just another fucking mess. Taking off the slice of my sanity, just make sure that you're well fed. I'm not wrong yet. I'm not talking yet. I'm not talking yet. I'm not talking yet.
Carol Ann is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves. Her life force. It is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
And welcome back, everybody. I see we got a phone call on the line, but just hold on a second. Mr. David, I will get to you in just a moment. I got to finish our story because it's a cliffhanger. Everybody's waiting anxiously to hear what happened. So I am too, because I haven't read these things either. So we're learning them together, ladies and gentlemen. So she's in her bed, pinned down by her dog, who is got this feral growl look on his face, but staring intently at her window. She looks over, and the stalker is there looking in. He sees her looking at him, and they make eye contact, and he bolts. But it says, the SOB looked straight into my eyes and hightailed it out of there. I unburied my arm, grabbed my phone, and called the police. I live in a small town, so they were there in under 2 minutes. When they looked around the house, they found cigarette butts on the ground by the window, and a wet substance on the side of my house under the window that turned out to be, oh God, it turned out to be stuff, man milk. I don't know what the hell to do with this, so I'm just gonna leave that there. And he was arrested, and they linked the DNA to an actual rape he had committed and served time for in a different county. Well, I'm sure he's just a pillar of society. Ectoplasm. Duke. I have absolutely no doubt that if my dog hadn't been there, I would have been raped and possibly worse. Sergeant passed away 2 months later after being hit by a car. Nothing will ever replace my big hero, but my Cane Corso Mastiff police-trained protection dog I got shortly after Sergeant passed has a special spot in my heart, just like Sarge does. Wow, that is intense. What a creepy bastard. Oh, what the hell is wrong with people? Oh, my God. Yeesh. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't know that we were heading all the way to Creepy Town on this one. But there you have it. Let's get to our phone call and see what's going on. Area code 903, you're on the air.
Thank you.
Welcome. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good.
Good.
So my story I've told very few people because I'm a computer science person, very logically minded. So it's very hard for me to even wrap my head around it. But I'll tell it the best way I can.
Okay.
And it's not just one thing. There's a number of oddities about it.
Okay.
So this happened over a decade ago, but basically I was in an accident. I fell 35 feet down the intake shaft on a ship while it was in dry dock.
Oh.
So that alone is a very damaging thing. And I remember very little before, whenever the accident happened and all that. What I do remember is that during the time that I was in the hospital, it was like I was looking down at somebody in a hospital bed, coffin type thing, and there were people around, and they were all very sad. And the main figures that stick out is that I can remember seeing a door, and there were two people at the door, and they were standing guard. But not just standing guard, they were stopping entry from anything else. And you could sense and feel that they should not have been able to do that, but it was happening. At the same time, I could feel something behind me that was just immense, something that was calming, peaceful, tranquility, everything you can imagine about just being at peace.
Uh-huh.
And figures in the room, there was one in particular that was always by the bedside. And I remember that figure would also go to the window and light candles and then would go back to the bedside, just kind of in vigil. And as it went, more and more and more people started showing up. But they were just kind of cloudy like people. You couldn't really make anything out. Anyways, as it went on, I remember asking, I was like, I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
All these people are so sad. They're so incredibly sad when the person right there is fine. They're fine. Why can I not see that they're fine?
Mm-hmm.
And I could feel the answer come to me, and it said, that's because they don't understand. They can't understand what's going on. And I sat there and I watched them for the longest time, and it was just overwhelming. And the number of people just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, as it went on, at one point, the lone female that was standing vigil and would go by the window and make sure the candles were lit and would come back, looked up at one point, and I could see her face but couldn't make out what it was. But the second she saw me and I saw her, an instant feeling of just overwhelming sadness and dread and torment and everything just came over. She was in so much pain.
Oh.
And I remember crying out, and I said, I whatever is happening, make it stop.
Mm-hmm. Stop
that woman's pain. It's too much. Well, during that time, obviously, I was in the hospital, and I was doing very poorly. I had a tear in my aorta that required surgery. I have 3 grafts, number of different things that my temperature at the time was like 104 to 106.
Jeez.
It was just, I was not doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during that time, months later, I was talking to my mom and my brothers, and they said, we thought we were going to have mom committed. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, she was obviously just beside herself, crying, sad, because my mom's a nurse. She knew exactly what an aortic dissection was. My older brother's a nurse, and my little brother was an EMT at the time. They all knew exactly how bad it was.
Wow.
Anyways, months later, talked to my mom, and I was talking to my brothers, and they said, yeah, you were still in the hospital, unresponsive. You were literally strapped down to the bed because if you moved too much, it would tear the grafts and you would die.
Oh.
And she just came in one day, happy as could be, and just checked a few things and was going about the room. And they looked at her and were like, Mom, are you okay? And she said, yeah, he's going to be fine. And they're like, what do you mean? He's like, no, he's fine. He's good. She goes, I had a dream about it. He's fine.
Wow.
And they're like, you're going to have to explain a little bit more. We're going to have to do something else for you. And she said, I had a dream and I looked up and I saw an angel holding him. And she said, the angel, it was a figure, but she goes, the wings stretched from one peripheral vision to the other as far as you could see. And the angel was taking him up. And she goes, and I cried out in desperation and fear and said, please do not take my son.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes, and in that moment it hit me and I had to let go and say, he's not taking him, he's protecting him.
Mm.
And I fully believe that the person I looked down and saw was my mother.
Right.
Now, the story doesn't end there, as I've communicated with other family members and learned all this, because I have about a 3-month gap in my memory.
Oh, sure.
But apparently that day was a very late February, early March, was a odd snowstorm the day of my accident. And my family actually had to spend the night in Dallas because all planes were grounded.
Oh, wow.
It was like a freak snowstorm out of nowhere. All planes were grounded. They spent the night in Dallas. And everybody was kind of like, it was a very odd thing. In addition to that, later found out that my 2 brothers never left the hospital. They actually got people and figured out they would occasionally take a shower, but other than that, they never once left the hospital at all.
Wow.
And I was unconscious for almost a week. But so I fully believe that the two figures by the door were my brothers standing guard. I fully believe that the person I looked down and saw was my mother. Now, in addition to that, just go ahead.
I was going to say, what do you think about those other sad, cloudy figures were?
Well, as I recovered, I started getting letters and notes and get well cards from people that I didn't even know. Okay. And my family does come from a very religious background, and they were sending out messages to people. I mean, I was getting get well cards from people from states that I had never been to. And I've traveled quite a bit being in the military and the Navy and around the world. And I got hundreds of cards from people from prayers and different things of people that were reaching up and, basically offering vigil or prayers or however you want to put it spiritually for me to get better. And I fully believe that it was all that. I didn't know them. I couldn't make any of them out, but that's what it was. In fact, my aunt that lived in a different city altogether, far away from me, said that she had, and I come from a very small town. My graduating class was 32. And she said that whenever they said it in their church, she had a guy walk up to him and said, he didn't know me, but I went to school with him and I remember him. And I hope he makes it through this.
Wow. Small world.
In addition to that, the base that I was on was in a test phase, and it was the only military base that had a completely civilian paramedic team, because the military wanted to send me to a military hospital, and the civilian paramedics said, no, he needs to go to the level 1 trauma center. He needs to be care flighted, and he needs to get there now.
Wow. So
had I gone to anywhere else or that happened on any other base, more than likely I wouldn't be here.
Wow.
In addition to that, the area that I fell down, nobody knew how to get to, because people don't go into that space on a ship. It's not where people normally are. But when they finally figured out how to get to it, because they had to move the hangar doors to get to a hatch that had 32 bolts. When I say bolts, they're bigger than an inch apart, to get to me. Jeez. Well, there happened to be somebody else doing work on something else on the flight deck that had an impact wrench with the exact size socket that was needed to undo the 32 bolts to get to where I was at once they figured it out.
Oh my God. Wow.
Not only that, but the captain of the paramedics advised the captain of the ship, and they literally told him, if we carry him off the ship just going up and down the stairs, he will die, because the shaking and the jostling from his internal damages will kill him. So the captain walked off the ship, walked down the pier, and there was a crane right next to us, ordered the crane driver to move the crane, and they used the crane to move me from the part of the ship all the way to the pier and basically set me right next to the paramedics in the ambulance to have me care flighted out.
Oh my God.
So between the storm, the bolts, they didn't know where I was at. By the time we added up all the percentages of the survival ratings, it was like less than 1% chance to survive. I mean, and yet it did. And all of it was these weird one-off situations that, had it have happened any other way, then I wouldn't have made it.
That is incredible.
And like I said, a lot of it, I'm a very logically minded person. So sometimes I can say it, I can see it, I can know what happened, but it's hard to wrap my head around.
Yeah, that gets beyond the scope of logic. That's like divine providence then.
Right. And the odd thing about it is there's so many times when I have a distinct feeling that what happened to me was not for me, because I have no memory. I don't remember I don't remember the week before my accident, because the week before that, my mom and sister-in-law had flown out and spent the week with us. And I have no memory of it whatsoever. They had flown back home the day before my accident.
Wow.
And so they basically literally got home, and before they had even unpacked their bags, got the call that, hey, I'm going into the hospital.
Wow.
But I fully believe that it was 4 other people and other parts versus something that was for me, happened to me, but I have no memory of it at all, other than a few fragments here and there in different parts of the story and different things. When my mom came in and she was happy, and my brothers looked at her and were like, okay, she's lost her mind. I mean, he's sitting here running 105 fever. His blood pressure's 75 over 30.
Oof.
He's not doing good, and she's just happy as can be. And
Wow.
it was that day that all of a sudden my fever broke, my blood pressure came up, and I actually woke up that day.
That's amazing. Wow. That's a whole lot of good things going your way. Did you buy a lottery ticket?
Well, if I wasn't in the hospital, I probably would have.
That is amazing.
But like I said, it's like you said, it.
Did it lose you? Uh-oh. Something's gone sideways here. I don't know if we lost you, David. I'm not sure what's going on. Hello? Are you there? I can see you're still talking, but there's no sound. That is strange. Welcome to the portal. Can you guys hear me okay on YouTube and on the vault? Can you guys hear me on TFR? Let me know. I don't know what's going on. Wow, it looks like I lost my connection to my own call board. That is really strange. Hold on, David. I'm trying to get right back to you. For some reason, we got disconnected from our own call board. I'm calling it back. All right, are you there? Are you there? No?
Yeah, there you are.
Oh man, my Skype dropped me off of my own call boards. That is that's never ever happened before, David. So,
Interesting.
yeah,
That's interesting of itself.
it is. But the kind of problems we have on the show always baffle my imagination. That's very strange. But what did you say at the end there, before I got lost?
Where did you get cut off at?
I don't know. It just shocked me so much that I've lost my train of thought. But
Okay. Well, and that's what I try to explain to people, is that it's not just the angel. There's so many other little parts that happen that it blows my logical mind away to try to even wrap my head around it or think about it.
Right.
I mean, I know that my mom later read the surgical report, and I mean, how bad I was off can't be explained, during the surgery and during different parts. But I know that the paramedics came and checked on me because they couldn't believe I lived. They came and checked on me multiple times while I was in the hospital. And one of them told me, he said, we put 2 bags of fluid in you. And after 2 bags of fluid to help your blood pressure, it was 72 over 29 when you got to the hospital.
Yeah, that's not working much at all. Wow. You had actually torn your aorta. What's called an aortic dissection, which means that you have multiple layers of tissue in your aorta. Okay.
And it had torn through all the layers except the outside layer.
Oh.
And it creates a bubble around it. And so that last layer of tissue held until the surgery. And that's one thing my mom pointed out, is that she said that literally whenever they made the surgical incision to get to my aorta, it finally ruptured. Because if that would have ruptured, I would be dead. You'd bleed out in no time.
Yeah, that'd just be.
But it didn't actually rupture until they already had me on the surgical table, were there to repair it and do it, because the surgical report said the doctor had to immediately apply a digital clamp. And my mom was like, do you understand what that means? And I said, they have some kind of digital tool that, goes in, specialized thing and does this and this. And she goes, no, she had to reach in with her fingers and stop the bleeding.
Oh, wow.
Because it ruptured right as they got to it.
There's just so many things that defy logic and defy the odds. I mean, everything about this was, how long were you down in there before you were actually recovered?
It was over an hour.
My God.
Because they had to contact some other specialists to figure out how to get to me. And they were coming up with different plans to try to get like a tripod to lower me down and this. And there happened to be one of the specialists on base that knew the ship very well and the engineering side of it. And he came over and he knew how to move the hangar doors a certain percentage over that shows what you would always see as a door there. But I mean, just a plate on the wall and never think anything about it. And that actually went to the space where I was at. Now, when you talk about how dangerous my situation was, I couldn't fit through the little hole in the thing on the stretcher because the stretcher was too wide. They actually used a roll of duct tape and duct taped me to the stretcher so they could invert it 90 degrees to get me out, which again, you're talking about somebody with that level of injury being shifted 90 degrees to their side to be pulled out.
That is amazing.
And additionally, there were two other people that stepped on the 6 foot by 6 foot metal plate that gave way, and it didn't fall through for them.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. Well, I'm thrilled you're still here. Now, you don't have like any other memory, just that one memory of events throughout that whole.
I have a few spotty. Yeah, I have a few spotted memories. Like I can remember the weightless feeling whenever the crane moved me. I didn't know it was a crane moving me, but I had the weightless feeling of being picked up and moved. And I remember seeing somebody above me and they were asking me questions. And they said, you know what happened? And I said, no, I don't. And they said, well, you were in an accident. Later, I found out it was my best friend on the ship, and he was down on the pier whenever they lowered me. And he asked the question, do you know what happened? And I said, no. He said, you were in an accident. And he said, I had a look on my face, and he said, do you know where you're at? I said, no. He said, do you know who I am? And I looked at him and I said, no, not a clue. And he looked at me and he said he could still tell I had a confused look on my face. And he said, do you know who you are? And he said, just as straight faced and peaceful as to be. I looked at him and said, nope. And he said he got really, really worried about me. And then without even blinking, without even thinking about it, I said, somebody called my mom. Her phone number is, and I rattled off her phone number. Well, as it happened, that the department that controls records hadn't updated my emergency contact. They didn't have contact information for my mom or family because it had been misplaced or wrongly input or whatever. But because I had said that, they had her number and that she was actually the first person contacted at the time.
Wow. That's amazing. There's so many things that defy logic and explanation, and it's truly a paranormal event, but in the divine way. It's definitely a beautiful event. And I know you're a person of faith, so I can definitely understand why, because clearly you had a whole lot of things going right for you at a time when none of it should have worked out.
Right. And like I said, my major is in computer science, so I'm logically minded. And so it defies a lot of different things, which that in my mind are easy to accept or believe.
Yeah. But
it happened. And it makes it even harder to accept it or wrap my head around it because I have no memory of it.
Yeah, well,
I don't remember falling. The two guys that were up there that had walked across it heard it, and they looked back and saw the plate shaking. And had they not been there, the plate would have fallen in on top of me.
Oh, geez.
And they ran over and grabbed it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, but you think about it, and all the memories you don't have, those are pretty good ones not to have. You don't remember.
That's what everybody tells me.
You don't remember falling down a 30-foot gap and slamming yourself and all the terror and trauma that you went through. I mean, if I had to choose which memories to let go of, those would be mine too.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And like I said, at times it's you. And I don't realize that I have certain handicaps now because of it, which none of them anybody. If you saw me walking down the street, you would ever think about nerve damage and so forth. But I mean, it's at certain things happen, and I have to remind myself, oh yeah, this happened to me, so this.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing, brother. And thank you so much for calling in and sharing it on the show. I'm so thrilled you did.
Not a problem.
All right, David, have a great night, and thank you, and thank the missus for
You too.
making you call in, because she knows.
I will.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Take care. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to break, and we'll be back for the last half hour in just a couple minutes. Don't go away. There may be a test. welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the last half hour of our show tonight. Be sure to stick around afterwards if you're listening to TFR, iHeart, TuneIn, or TalkStream Live, because Nikki Colombo's show will be coming up next, and her guest tonight is Max Egan. I think it's Egan. I think it's Max Egan is how you pronounce that. I hope I'm right. I've heard the name many, many times, and I've always heard it pronounced that way, so I'll assume I'm correct. Always, Nikki's shows are wonderful. She's a great person and a lot of fun to listen to, a lot of light, lot of laughter and energy. Great job she does. And after Nikki, of course, stick around for Paisley Wild coming up with the Spaces Between after that. So it should be a fun-filled night here on TFR where the action just continues and continues. And hello to Daryl Bowles in the TFR chat room. Good to see you. And TFR Wookie, good to see you there. Good to see you guys. I just want to make sure to give those shout outs. And let's see. I've got a call on the board as well. We've got great callers tonight. Thank you guys for participating and calling in and being a part of the show. It really means the world to me, but let's get to this call. And this is area code 858. You're on the air. Hello?
Oh, hey guys.
Oh, it's Mr. Lewis. How you doing, brother?
Good. You got a ghost story to tell.
Well, please tell it, sir, because we love a good ghost story.
Oh, yeah. It's on Wednesday night.
Uh-huh.
I heard music coming from my left ear, and it was actually a girl, but...
It was a girl?
Yeah.
Now, was it singing or was it music?
Some coming from my headphones, but it wasn't.
It was singing or was it music or was it both?
It was singing.
Wow. That's really cool. Is that a normal thing? Does it ever happen before, or is this the first time ever?
It's a first time for a long time, though. I haven't heard it for a while.
So what did you do then? You heard the music and what? Did you freak out? Did you just kick back and listen to it?
I went to Ghostbuster mode and tried to investigate if this is real,
Uh-huh.
if it's a spirit. So it was, and then yesterday I talked to a psychic friend that was at work, and she said it was actually a spirit.
Oh, very cool. Now, when you were investigating, did you find anything? Did you try doing EVPs or anything like that?
No, I just try to figure out if it was coming from my headphones.
Uh-huh.
Try to debunk it, and there is nothing there.
That's really cool. Very profound. Now, does your house have any history that you know of? Is there other activity that's been going on, or is this brand new?
It's pretty brand new. I mean, the rest are just my animal friends trying to get my attention.
Oh, cool. Well,
by tapping on my feet or shaking the bed like it's an earthquake, but there's no, it's not even an earthquake at all.
Wow. Now I got to ask you, how did you get a gut feeling from this? Like, hey, this is really weird, I don't like it, or was it kind of a peaceful feeling? Or because I think a lot of times in ghost encounters we get those intuitive feedback. It's like if something's really wrong, you get that really wrong feeling. Like like I was mentioning earlier, I think we sense evil, we sense darkness. But other times things can happen, and you just kind of, it doesn't feel bad, but it's just odd. So how did you feel?
It was really odd.
Well, it is odd. It's odd to hear singing in your left ear when nobody should be singing there. But was it a good song?
It was good.
Okay.
I mean, a long time ago, I would hear another girl humming in my right ear, but...
Oh, really? Wow. Do you suppose it's the same spirit?
It could be. I don't know.
You might have someone hanging on there, Lewis. Someone following you around. Maybe it's one of your guides. I don't know. You should talk to Deb about that.
It could have been, but I just don't know.
Well, that's really cool, brother. That's awesome. And it's always good to hear from you. How's the rest of your world going? Good?
A little rough because work,
Uh-huh. Yeah, there's always that work thing, but other than that, everything's good.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, brother. Well, thank you for
So
calling.
demons.
Go ahead.
The good thing is no demons attaching from to me yet this year.
What's that? I'm sorry, I missed that. What'd you say?
I said the good thing there's no demonic activity as of late this year.
Oh yeah, I think of all the activity I wouldn't want to experience, I think demon activity is like on the top of that list. It's certainly it's a dangerous kind of thing. I do think that people throw the demon word around very loosely and very freely, and I don't think most of what people claim is demonic it actually is. But I think if you ever truly bump into a demon thing, and I'm not saying you are or aren't, I'm just saying, we hear the word demonic all the time, and I just don't think that they're that everywhere. I think they're around, but it's God. I hope you don't ever have to bump into that.
I just had nightmares about them.
Sure. Do you think they were spiritual dreams, or do you think they were just dreams?
I think it's just them visiting and harassing me. But
well,
luckily, I haven't possessed yet.
Well, keep your guard up just in case. If they are around, you definitely want to be careful, brother.
Yeah, I will try. Thank you, though.
Oh, of course, man. Well, it's great to hear from you, and thank you for calling in. I hope things are wonderful in your world. All right, Lewis, have a great night.
You too.
Okay. And let's see. There it goes. All right. It finally muted. Okay. So what the hell was I doing? Oh, yeah. I remember what I was doing. I have a hard time knowing what I'm doing a lot of the times. But some amazing call-ins tonight, guys. Thank you so much for that. Those make my night go so much better. When I was going down, I was like, I don't know how Brent does this. But honestly, you guys make it so much easier when you call in, when you participate, when you share your stories, share your experiences. That's everything. Of course you can always, search for things to bring to you on the show, but when you guys participate, when you bring in your experiences and what you've lived through, it makes every show just absolutely amazing. Like I get done with shows like this and I just sit here and just think, wow, that was really cool. So it's a great feeling to know that you guys are out there and want to take part. So the phone line is open if anybody else out there would like to share a story of their own. 720-923-0500. And remember, you can always email. If you don't want to do the whole talking thing or talking on the air, you can email at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Also, remember to check out the podcast if you would. If you haven't already, we have a podcast out there. It's the Paranormal Portal Podcast. And today's episode was the terrifying dogman encounters. And Don and I went through several of them. And some of them aren't really terrifying. I don't know. Maybe I should have named it just Dogman Encounters, but that's already a show out there by Vic Cundiff, so I didn't want to do that. But, it's just a phenomenal topic. And it's phenomenal, and it's phenomenally scary. It's the kind of topic that, I don't know. Again, that's just one of those things you don't want to run into. But it's out there everywhere you can find podcasts. You can find that show. So, and all of our other shows as well. I think we're on 28, 27 episodes now, something like that. So there are a bunches of brand new shows that you might not have seen if you haven't checked out the podcast or actually heard, since it's just audio. But the next story in our list of stories it says, my brother's girlfriend moved in and brought her demons with her. That kind of fits after the phone call, right? So it says, this happened to my older brother. His ex-girlfriend used to live with my parents and me at our house until they could get back on their feet. After a financially difficult time, Krista used to tell me stories about how she was always been able to see things ever since she was a little girl. When they moved in, I immediately could tell that something had changed. The air felt heavier, and it felt like there was always something that was watching you, especially at night. Well, what happened to my brother was nothing short of paranormal activity scene. Anyone who owns an Xbox Kinect knows that It throws those green dots all over the place, and my brother woke up in the middle of the night and saw a reflection in their TV. There was someone standing at the door of his bed, and the Kinect registered it. The figure crossed the length of his bed and stood next to him. His girlfriend woke up, and the figure vanished. After he told me of that, I always kept a light on and was happy when they moved to Ohio. When Krista left, so did whatever she brought with her. I believed in the paranormal stuff before, but it was what nightmares are made of. Yeah, that's creepy. Now, again, there's the word demon that gets used, and it's like, there's no indication there that was a demonic presence at all. Just because something creeps you out doesn't make it evil. There's just, and if she's a sensitives are a beacon to spirits. They are just a bright light that spirits will gravitate towards because in many cases they want to communicate. They want to sort things out. And so it may have just come because she was there. It doesn't necessarily mean it was something she dragged along with her everywhere she went, like bad luggage. I don't know. The next one is called Footsteps. All right, and this one is, we lived in a bungalow type of house, and the dining room would be a hallway away from the two rooms facing each other. And I was in one of the bedrooms. After not finding an interesting show on television, I turned it off. I grab a magazine and flip through the pages. I usually love to read about horror stories or articles since it's more interesting than local news. Pretty much everything is more interesting than local news. When I finish the last article, I hear footsteps coming from the hallway. You see, I know my family really well, and I know whose footsteps belong to who, so when I heard a different type of thud, my heart really started beating fast. The footsteps sound like it was running around, and it would run in circles at a certain part and then run back to the end of the hallway. And it continued a few times. I wanted to wake my niece, whom was peacefully sleeping, but she wouldn't even stir. Gulping down, I went to open the door and ran to the living room where the hallway ends. And I saw my other niece watching TV with the maid and my father cooking. With a shaky voice, I asked, Who are you running around? My 6-year-old niece looked at me oddly before shaking her head, and said, "We were just watching TV ever since you went inside." The maid answered. I looked at my father, who was suddenly intrigued of my sudden nervousness. "Pa, you didn't hear anything?" He shook his head no. "Someone was running around," I said. My father shook his head with a smile. "Must be one of our friends again." Our house used to be a rice field, and they say the Spaniards killed some people here and left hidden until someone would find their remains. So I think this is coming from the Philippines. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I'm not sure what the whole pacing up and down hallways is all about. I don't know. Sometimes I'm not sure what some spirits experience, but that whole earthbound thing sounds boring as hell. I mean, you just sit stuck in a closet somewhere or just walking up and down a hallway, and that's like it. I don't know. That sounds like a fresh kind of hell to me. Here's one that says, my friend who lived in the attic. I live in, I think it's Ohio. It says OH, but it's small letters. But I think they meant the state OH with capital letters. And of course, if it's in Ohio, that doesn't surprise me at all. USA, in a house built in 1931. As an infant, I always stared at a corner in the living room. And upon getting older, about 3, I told my mom I made a new, I think they forgot the word friend. His name was Jay. She pushed it off as an imaginary friend, and I talked to him often. I talked to him often and told her about him. And one day I started whispering in the attic, and she asked what I was doing, so I told her Jay lives there. Later that night, her younger sister heard whispering in her room and saw a shadow in the corner. She told her mom in the morning, and upon further research, The man who built the house murdered his wife and only child for no apparent reason. The son's name was Jay. We still live here, and my little brother has started talking to the attic. Whoa. That's a little bit of creepiness. This one's, can anyone help me figure out what this is? I've had this reoccurring nightmare since I was 7, and it's about this thing that lives in the mirrors I have in my room. But it seems to follow me to other places because I had the same nightmares when I went away to college. It started simply enough. One night I woke up and looked over at the mirror hanging on my door, and I could see this thing hunched over me, looking into the mirror and smiling. It had green, yellow eyes, dark, scraggly, long hair, and entirely too many teeth. I guess at that point I woke up for real and turned on the TV in my bedroom, and it just went away. My mom took the mirror down the next day for me. Nothing happened again until my senior year of college. I had a room where I had my own bedroom, and my bed was right across from it. You could see into the mirror from my bed, and there was also an old mirror hanging on the door leading to the hallway of the dorm building. From my bed, you could see a little table and chair set that I had set up. Well, first night I'm there, I wake up, and there's this thing again, laying in bed with me, but staring into the mirror and smiling at me. That is so wrong. That's just so wrong. I freaked out and turned on my television to get some light into the room, and it was gone. Got out of bed, closed the door, and slept fairly well for the rest of the night. Next night, same thing happens. I wake up, I look around, and my eyes settle on the mirror, on the door leading out of my room, and she's there again, and she's smiling at me with her mouth full of too many sharp teeth. And then she stands up and walks out of the view of the mirror towards my bed, towards me. I freak the hell out and turn on the TV, cover the mirror with printer paper and tape, and don't get much sleep. The next night, my boyfriend at the time invites me over to his place. I go over around 8 and fall asleep pretty early because I'm exhausted. And well, you guessed it, I wake up and notice the mirror next to the ladder leading up to his bed, and the thing is climbing up the bed to me. I freak out and wake him up and have him walk me back to my dorm. From that point, I've made it a habit to cover mirrors with paper or scarves or whatever I can find. The weirdest thing is that sometimes when I talk about the thing, whatever I have covering the mirror will randomly fall off the mirror. I try to rationalize it as pure coincidence, but sometimes I'm not so sure. Yikes. That's some creepiness. We got about 7 minutes left, ladies and gentlemen. The nights fly by here on the portal, I'm telling you. This one is My Chest Demon. This sounds like a sleep paralysis thing. When I was 13, my older sister, who was 20 or 21 at the time, had been having some issues with her relationship and drugs and depression. She came back home to live with us, and naturally she was staying in my room with me since I had a spare bed, and there was a night very soon after she came home. I was asleep for just a bit, as was my sister, and the room was dark. And we were in a second-floor apartment, and my sister's bed was opposite mine, but we were sleeping with our heads transverse from each other, and I was able to look over and see her. Now for the incident. I was sound asleep. I started to come to, and it felt weird. I couldn't move, and I couldn't breathe. I opened my eyes, and in the dark room, I could still see the figure on my chest. I could feel it on me. It was pushing me down with its weight. In my panic, I screamed out in fear. The scariest part of my memory of this event is as I was screaming, I specifically recall looking over to my sister as if I was attempting to get her help visually, and I saw her sitting upright in her bed, staring at me and screaming also. Suffice it to say, my mom and stepdad came in to see what was up, and we would determine there was nothing in my room. The next morning, my sister confirmed to me that she saw the creature on me, and she said she was screaming first, and that's when I woke up and started screaming because I saw it too. To this day, 20 years later, she still says with clarity that she saw it. Her story has never changed. It has never come back to me, just that one time. Yeah, that's horrible. That's horrible. So, the term sleep paralysis gets thrown around, but there's no indication that it couldn't be a spiritual phenomena. And its roots is in a spiritual phenomena, but there's the new clinical explanation of sleep paralysis. Now, I do believe there is such a thing as sleep paralysis in the clinical sense. I think that can happen as well, but I don't think that explains all of these events where people are seeing something or feeling a presence, feeling hands pushing them down. That doesn't, the whole sleep paralysis explanation doesn't explain all of that away. And it's not because it doesn't try. It's just because so many different people with no knowledge of each other are reporting the same kind of phenomenon. It's also known as the old hag syndrome. The old hag would come and lean over and suck the life out of people as they slept and press them down into their beds, and they would be paralyzed. It's kind of almost like an energy vampire kind of thing, really. My hissing friend is the next one. I think I can get through this one. This one might be it. It all happened about 18 years ago. I was a junior in high school, and during this point in my life, I was frequently experiencing strange occurrences. Shadows caught in the corner of my eye, the feeling of being watched, voices that seemed to be whispering in a strange language, like an invisible swarm of bees flying around my head trying to speak to me. However, nothing compares to what occurred on this night. My bedroom had a bunk bed that ran along the east wall when you walked in. I had a single window that sat on the opposite wall directly across from me, and I typically slept on the top bunk on my side facing the window. For some reason, I was awakened suddenly out of a deep sleep and immediately succumbed to the feeling of being watched. As I adjusted from deep sleep to awakened, I noticed a shadow standing in the middle of my room. I knew immediately that it was not cast from anything in the room because of the shadow was standing in the middle of the only light that peered in through the window from the full moon that stood outside. The black shadow staring right at me began to let out a growl as it stood there that still gives me the creeps to this day. Before my still adjusting senses could make sense of what was going on, it changed its gruesome growl to a high-pitched, seething hiss. As it made this hissing sound, it raised its arms up, and what I can only describe as claw-like fingers grew longer and longer until they reached across and down through my body. The feeling was unlike anything I've ever experienced before, and every part of my body that it was ripping through felt a dead cold burn that registered absolute hopelessness and lifelessness, a very horrid and unequal feeling. Again, the shadow let out the unforgettable hiss while it lifted its arms again, reaching out and clawing through me again and again and again. As it repeated this, I felt the hopelessness and lifelessness all over, tearing through what I can only say was literally my soul. My family's very religious, and I was too at the time, and knew I had to do something to get rid of this evil presence. So with what I felt like all my might, I slowly raised my left hand and said, "With the power of Lord Jesus Christ, I command you to be gone," and pushed at it, not with my muscle force. I felt like I was using an energy from within, and during this instant, the shadow was letting down one more rip, but my efforts actually physically pushed the shadow slowly back. Its seething hiss changed to a sound, and it flew back and away in slow motion. But the shadow wasn't done. It was still stretching its claws one last time to rip through me as it slowly flew back. I distinctly remember one of its fingers edge near my neck and curl around my metal chain I had on, as if hanging from the edge of a cliff. On the chain hung a crucifix that I never took off. The shadow was still slowly fading back, and one claw curled around the chain allowed it to continue hang on until I heard a snap. And I will never forget the feeling of the chain unraveled around my neck and slid off. The chain, along with the crucifix, fell off to the side of my bunk bed and onto the ground. The shadow faded even more while still reaching out for me with its long arms until it disappeared before all could register in my head. I remember being so exhausted and drained from what just happened, I literally hit the pillow and passed out back to sleep. The next thing I know, I'm waking up morning and it's begin thinking about what had just happened, and I remember thinking, wow, that was a crazy dream. that felt so real, as if I was awake. It had to be a dream because I still have my crucifix on, and I reached for it on my chest. The crucifix is gone, and my heart begins to pound. I look over on the edge of the bunk bed to see if it's still on the spot, and I remember falling to in the night. And sure enough, it was there on the floor, rolled up and broken exactly as I remember it, unraveling and falling over in the night. Wow. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's going to wrap up our Friday journey. I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can. Stay tuned for Nikki Colombo with Max Egan coming up next. And Paisley Wild, The Spaces Between, later. Have a great night, everybody. Sweet dreams.